Well, hello there, and welcome back to another edition or episode of the Lunch and Learn. This is our last one for the fifth year season, so we're kind of wrapping it up for this year, and we've got a good one. Unfortunately, I'm flying solo. Joe and Kit have both abandoned me, so I get the privilege, I guess, of being solo with Clinton Normore. Clinton is the Associate Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion, and he's going to be here today to talk to us a little bit about the climate survey that we have coming up.
Absolutely.
In addition to that, we've got some additional things for you. We've got Beth Thompson going to do a little break for us and teach us about mail merge and using labels. And then we're also going to get to know with Kit and Joe, even though they're not here, with Randy Danielson. So stay tuned for that. But let's get started first with Clinton. And Clinton, just tell us a little bit, if you can, to start with, what kind of do we mean by the term climate?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Brian, for having me. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about the climate survey and probably the reason Kit and Joe aren't here.
Let's hang that on them. I like that.
Yeah, I'll tease them about that later. But relative to our climate study, our cultural proficiency climate study, climate in and of itself is indicative of behaviors, standards, practices in an institutional setting. So the idea of a climate study is to measure those perspectives from different constituent groups.
Excellent. So that's kind of the purpose of the climate study.
Correct.
Is just to kind of take a look at things, see where things stand, and get a baseline?
Absolutely. We have done much of this work since I arrived in 2013 with regard to our diversity strategic planning process and our university strategic planning process. The climate study itself, especially having a third-party vendor, accentuates the work and also solidifies the data collection in terms of, one, security and privacy of those folks providing information for us, and then allows us to connect or correlate that data with existing data already in each of those current strategic plans.
Great. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, it's a question that probably is self-evident, but I want to ask it anyway. Why is it important to have a positive climate?
Well, research suggests that outcomes, whether it's student learning or positive experiences from our faculty, staff, and students, are conducive to a positive experience on campus, a good climate. So for any institution, it's important to have a positive and inclusive and welcoming environment, i.e. client, in order to improve those outcomes.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit more just about the logistics of the survey. How was it developed? Who was involved?
Okay. We actually began work towards the climate study in about 2014. We started talking about the idea of a climate study. In 2015, we broached that idea with more formality with regard to searching different vendors. And in 2016, we actually launched the climate study work with a climate study work group, which is a broad array of campus constituents to help work with the chosen vendor, Rankin Associates, to develop the actual survey. So it has been a long process. But and it's taken that long to really get to where we are now.
That's great. So there were several people. How many people were involved in kind of the initial group?
There are actually 3 work groups. There is a formal work group, which is the day-to-day work group, and we've met multiple times in the process. There are about 10 to 12 individuals on that work group. I co-chair with Dr. Andy Birch. Yep. On that aspect, and then there are 2 different sub-work groups, one of which is communications and marketing, and another is really the assessment piece, the data piece.
Right. And you mentioned a little bit that we're working with a partner. Who is actually conducting the survey?
The survey is being conducted by Rankin Associates. Sue Rankin, who was formerly a professor at Penn State University, is foremost in conducting climate studies, actually multifaceted climate studies, i.e. Climate studies with multiple campuses. She has done almost 170 climate studies in her tenure, 70 of which are on multi-campus settings. She has created a huge data bank of questions, I'm sure, which we'll get to a little bit later, about that go into climate study. But the idea of working with a group on campus helps to create those, or actually formulate those questions so that some might fit more with the university setting, and then create others that were not thought of in that research.
Great, and I'm guessing, I mean, her high level of expertise with multiple campuses really probably plays well for us, because we may have different climates in Missouri than we do in Arizona, no?
Absolutely, actually, and that dovetail and actually a segue into the cultural proficiency aspect of it. Cultural proficiency is a way of being which enables one or organizations to interact effectively in different cultural settings. And having a myriad of different campus settings creates even more different cultural settings. So having someone who is already familiar with setting up questions, with creating the kind of dialogue and the development piece to mesh with such a multifaceted organization like A.T. Still University is really important.
And I think it would matter too, that level of expertise, from everything from setting up the questions to interpreting it. Is that part of the thinking for having someone who's outside of ATSU conduct the survey, or are there other things to think about there as well?
Absolutely, and that is also attributed to the security, the privacy of the survey itself. So having a third-party vendor not only allows us to broach the development of the piece with more, one, transparency, but also a privacy standpoint for those, i.e. in the focus group setting, who participate, but also on the back end in assessing the data, the overall data based on those points which are they will deliver in terms of the survey analysis, the end results later in the year.
So who all is going to participate in the survey?
Well, we hope everyone. We hope all of our current students, faculty, and staff participate in this survey. What we've learned with other instruments across the campus at A.T. Still University is really engaged in these types of activities. So we hope that this will continue to have that level of engagement and possibly more, because quite frankly, if we don't have everyone invested in voicing their opinion, it's really hard to create an environment that's totally inclusive and welcoming. Although there's like cultural proficiency, you're always working on improvement. The idea of a climate survey is really that same principle, to start the work towards improving the community.
Yeah, as I was looking at some of the information that the working group has put together on it, they talk about the difference between a population study versus a survey study. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important here. Can you maybe explain the difference a little bit?
Absolutely. The population and sample relative, a sample survey will ideally miss some populations, particularly those populations who are underrepresented on our campus. And we truly don't want to overlook or miss those voices. The population approach, survey approach that we've taken, allows the opportunity for everyone's voices to be heard.
Yeah, that's great. And so I know there was a talk about how inclusive it is, and the idea is that there are maybe some microclimates that might exist, or even micro groups that we want to make sure that we get their input from?
Absolutely. In A.T. Still University, just as in any other institution, some of the demographic groups are much smaller than others. So we want to make sure, say like, for example, if we look at mid-level managers or senior, I'm not senior leadership, look at mid-level managers, African American, there would be very few of those persons represented on the survey. But if you, so you want to make sure that those voices are heard. Now, from a privacy standpoint, and this is also important to note, from a privacy standpoint, if 5 persons on the survey are indicated, or less than 5 persons on the survey are denoted, then the results will not be delivered on those 5 individuals. What they'll do is fold that information, the information they can, into the larger group analysis.
Good, so it's even more important to have everybody participate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we really can have that broader group represented, as well as all of the micro groups that are associated.
Absolutely, and the beauty, and an additional beauty to that is, from a micro standpoint, is The data will subsequently be housed at A.T. Still University, which is another reason, probably one of the most important reasons that we chose Rankin Associates, is that we get to own the data afterwards. So if a school wants to look at more specific data with regard to their climate, or a program with regard to their climate, then they would essentially broach that request to either Dr. Melanie Davis and or Kurt Law to deliver that specific data. Now, they have to be specific in the request because they will not just provide general data information.
Sure. Great. So talk to us a little bit about how were the questions developed. Does Dr. Rankin have kind of a core group of questions, and then the committee or the group maybe add some other questions? How does that work?
Absolutely. It's a really tenuous and time-consuming process. There are a large bank of questions, as I mentioned earlier, but we have to first establish the demographic breakup of the university, i.e. how we're going to deliver the questions. And then from there, we determine which questions will go to which demographic group and how they will be worded. The focus group, which we held focus groups on each campus with a broad array of different constituent groups, provided some guidance with regard to what questions might be utilized from the existing data bank, and also helped the campus study work group to formulate additional questions to meet our end goal.
Great. So the questions are really directed at specific groups. So it may be that I would get different questions than someone else.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. And then we talked a little bit about confidentiality and how that confidentiality will be protected. Are there any other considerations for data security?
Absolutely. One thing to note is the announcement of the survey goes out July 11th from the president. Dr. Phelps will send out an announcement. Included in that announcement will be a URL link. And those persons who are current students, faculty, and staff have access to our portal. So the first line of security is access to our portal in order to get to the URL link in the first place. And then the URL link then allows those persons who've gained access to the portal to go directly to the questions, the data bank. Now, ATSU does not own the URL link. The URL link is further secured by ownership of Rankin Associates on a secure server.
Yeah, it warmed my heart when I was reading that section in the description, all of the different parameters that were being thought about for security of the data.
Yeah, I think that's important because what Dr. Rankin realized, and many other researchers, is that folks are more likely to participate in surveys that are conducted outside the organization rather than those within.
Yeah. One other thing about the questions, I know that some of the questions that I looked at had kind of a wide variety of response answers. And as I was reading through the information, there was the concept of, when someone doesn't find their group, they have to hit that other.
Right.
And it seems like that kind of rubs people the wrong way. It makes them feel like they're not included somehow.
Absolutely, and that was one of the difficult parts of the survey, the tool development, the instrument development, was creating a large enough identifier for different demographic groups so that you don't get to the other category, because ideally we would like to use the other category less often than anything else.
Exactly.
So, and it only is reflected in certain groups. And then at the end of those which have the other denotation, there is a qualitative section with regard to people being able to provide comments.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit about the timeline for the survey, then we'll take a quick break and then come back and maybe talk about what we expect on the results. So kind of what's the timeline that we're looking at?
Okay, the survey is in the instrument tool itself is being finalized as far as development with the work group. The survey itself will be taken July 11th. It will be launched July 11th. There will be a 2 to 3 week period of time in which our campus community can take the survey. Then the results will be analyzed by Rankin Associates and delivered to the university. This is another important piece of the process, is that the results of this survey don't go to the administration or the work group first. They go to the larger campus community altogether.
Nice.
And that it creates more transparency in the process, and that will be in the fall of next year.
So a relatively quick turnaround.
Relatively quick turnaround.
All right, great. Well, we're going to come back with Clinton and talk a little bit more about kind of what we hope to gain from the survey. But first, let's take a little bit of a break and let's go to Beth Thompson, who's going to tell us with her Microsoft Certified Specialist role all about mail merges and labels.
Hello everyone. Recently I've had quite a few requests from people on both campuses to talk about mail merge, especially with labels. So today I'm going to very briefly go over some of the steps that you can use to do any type of mail merge, in this case labels. The nice thing about Microsoft Office or Microsoft Word is all of the steps that you need are basically in one line along the top. So we're going to start our mail merge here. In this case, we're going to do our labels. And I'm going to choose, if it ever pops up here, name badges, just because that gives us a little bit of a bigger size to work with, but you can pick any size label you have. The next step is selecting your recipients. Now this can be any table format. It can be an Excel table, a Word table, an Access table. However, it cannot be a Google document. Since Google documents are housed online, this actually has to be a table that's housed on your computer. So I've already created a list of my own here that happens to be an Excel file. And one thing of note too, once you get your labels set up, if you need to use a different data source, you can. You just select your recipients again. You don't have to recreate these labels. In this case, I also want to edit my list. My list has a whole bunch of people from different years and different conferences. I can actually filter out that I only want Conference A from year 2016. And that will immediately take my list down to only what I want. I can also uncheck any specific people I don't want. So again, if you have a data source that is very large and you only want portions, you can use this edit to choose the ones that you want, and it does not affect your original data source. Now, if you notice, this is where a lot of people get frustrated. They just see this blank thing. They don't see, where's my label? How do I see my labels? So I'm going to select this little plus up here, and you notice we have our table tools. If you go to Layout, there is a View Grid Lines feature. This will allow you to actually see the lines of where your label is. I highly recommend you turn the grid lines on. And this is also when you're wanting to do your formatting. So a lot of times with labels, we want them centered. So I'm going to set that up. I can also change my font at this point. I'm going to make it a little bit interesting font. So this is where you do your pretty formatting. Once you have your formatting done, you'll want to go back to your mailings and start inserting your fields. So I can do first name, last name, conference, year. Well, if I go to highlight my fields, you can see that they're gray. Another thing many people forget is each of these fields is a word. So they forget to put the punctuation, the spacing, etc. So make sure you put in your spacing wherever you need it. That's why I like to highlight the merge fields so I can see that I do have my spaces in between. Now notice it automatically puts a next record. You still have to put the fields, so I'm going to copy those, along with your next record. And you're going to have to do that all the way down. That way it knows to go to the next person, the next person, the next person. When you have everything you think the way you want it, I highly recommend that you preview the results. This will actually pull up an example of what it will look like when you print it out. When you think you have it all done, you go to Finish and Merge and edit your individual documents. And this will allow you to have the finalized view for whatever purpose you want. I highly recommend if you get to this point that you save it in case you need to reprint or redo. When you're done, save everything. You can go back and reuse it as many times as you want, just changing your data source. I know this has been a very, very brief overview. So if you do have any questions, or if you have topics for next year's sessions, please contact me at brthompson@atsu.edu, and I can help you with mail merge, any other office topics, or again, if you have ideas for next year. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, Beth. Appreciate that. And we will be sure to have her back next year for some additional helpful hints. So if you would, put those hints into the chat so that we can collect them right away while they're fresh in your mind. And that reminds me that I also need to do the little pitch for where you can pick up this information after the fact. So be sure that you check out our Facebook feed where we're feeding live, its.atsu.edu/FB. That'll get you the live stream to the Facebook live stream, and also they're recorded there. And once we get everything wrapped up and we edit the session a little bit, then you get the nice clean version from YouTube. And that's its.atsu.edu/YT, YouTube. So be sure to catch us there and pass these sessions on to your colleagues to make sure that they catch them as well. So we're back with Clinton Normore, and we talked a little bit about the Cultural Proficiency Climate Study, but I want to talk a little bit about how that fits into the bigger picture of diversity and climate and cultural proficiency at ATSU. So I want to talk a little bit about what is meant by cultural proficiency, and then we'll talk some more about some of the other projects that you've got going on related to it.
Absolutely. First, cultural proficiency, the working definition is a way of being which enables one or an organization to respond effectively in different cultural settings. So the fit from a climate study, the cultural proficiency climate study, is that this takes a look at quantitative and qualitative data which is perceived by the campus constituent groups for a living, learning, and working environment. So the idea that those particular campus settings are culturally proficient or can be, or the work needed to be to improve the cultural proficiency of those different settings is how the idea of cultural proficiency meshes with the strategic piece of the cultural proficiency climate study. Now, there is also more interconnectedness with regard to our diversity strategic plan and our university strategic plan. The diversity strategic plan has a component of strategic initiative of creating a welcoming and inclusive environment. And as you know, the university strategic plan has cultural proficiency as a core theme within it. Also addressed in the university with regard to the strategic approach to being culturally proficient, we have our core professional attributes, which are out of academic affairs, and these have been adapted so that our students, these are beta skills that students will have once they graduate from ATSU University. Well, that idea extends beyond just our student community, also our faculty, staff, and administrators community as well. So there is connectivity in this theme of cultural proficiency ingrained in the infrastructure of the institution. Now, as far as the diversity department and other constituents in which we work with, because one thing that's really important to note, that diversity cannot be achieved, diversity and inclusion cannot be achieved without the commitment and without the assistance of every part of the campus community. So we have worked with every aspect of campus community to broach ideas to improve our diversity. Among them are the way in which we recruit students with regard to the development of the student pipeline.
That's great. That's one of the programs that I was going to ask you about, is the Dreamline.
The Dreamline program.
So, and Dream with us.
Absolutely. It's actually unique. From K-12, we have broached the idea, the terminology of Dreamline, because what we're doing is nurturing the dreams of those young people so that they can, one, see the health professions as a way in which to, or a possible career, and then also understand what it takes to get there. And it's also important to note that in our Dreamline programs, there is a component that we want to engage the student's family as well to help, because we have to have community support as well in order to make that dream a realization.
I think that's a great component to include in it. And the Dreamline is really K-12, correct? So
Correct.
it's really before they even hit undergraduate. And it's just trying to get young people to think about careers in healthcare.
Absolutely. And then here in Missouri, we have the Summer Career Health Experience. Actually, the Student Affairs Department takes the lead, and we collaborate with Student Affairs to bring students from the St. Louis area, Metro St. Louis area, to campus, and we collaborate with Truman State University to learn more about what it takes to become a medical professional or a dental professional. In Arizona, in Mesa, we work with the Cartwright School District, the Black Chamber of Commerce, in the City of Phoenix School District, and our broaching relationship with the Mesa School District as well, to bring students to campus. Also to know, when we talk about the family unit working together, every part of the environment, we have the DIGers, the Health Disparities Interest Group in Arizona, with our assistance, put on the first pre-med workshop. Now that is more of a pipeline program than a Dreamline program, but that is indicative of what it takes and the level of commitment in order to really transform an organization. Now that's from a student's perspective. We also have some initiatives to help broaden our reach with regard to faculty and staff in our search committee process. Diversity EDU is a training and educational model that we utilize for search committees, and they require that those search committees, not require, they suggest that those search committees pursue that 1.5 hour training in order to formulate a more diverse applicant pool.
That's great. I mean, it's such a broad topic, really.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got Dreamline from the student perspective or potential student perspective, thinking about K-12. Then you've got the pipeline, as you call it, which I think is familiar to many of us at ATSU,
Right.
more traditional approach with undergraduate institutions. And you've got some partnership agreements there too, no?
Absolutely. We have a new partnership agreement, a significant partnership agreement with Langston University, the Kirksville College of Osteopathic Medicine, the Missouri School of Dentistry and Oral Health have signed a articulation agreement with Langston, and we are now about to sign an agreement with the College of Graduate Health Sciences with Langston University as well. So, you know, prior to that, there was an agreement with Chaminade University. And I think it's important for our audience to know that when we talk about diversity and inclusion, the brand that we deliver as university is more than hue. So we don't think, often when we think about diversity, we think of the complexion of the diverse demographic groups. But it's much more than that. There are many different intersectionalities with regard to diversity. So we think of women, we think of LGBTQ, we think of underserved populations in terms of poor, military. Those are a variety of, are part of the construct of diversity that exists throughout our
We're talking
society.
about those micro groups and, you know, people with disabilities, maybe
Absolutely.
a micro group that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's neat about the whole climate study is it's so broad that it really encompasses all of that to try and build the type of culture that we want so that people feel welcomed here, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, isn't that, so let's talk a little bit about the results and kind of what we hope to get out of the survey. Talk a little bit about that first.
Sure. The idea is to get more qualitative and quantitative data with regard to perceptions, how those different demographic groups feel about their campus experience, their lived experience, their working environment. And then a much broader outcome is to create specific objectives that might make our campus more culturally proficient, more welcoming, and more inclusive. Now, as I said, there is already this synergy, this interconnectedness with our strategic plan and our diversity strategic plan. So some of the metrics may already exist in those plans, and this might provide even more baseline data to help move further the process with regard to shoring up those plans.
So those are the quantitative components, right?
Right.
What about the qualitative components? What types of reports will come out of this? I mean, will we see from maybe focus groups as well as just kind of open-ended comments on the survey? Get that kind of feedback summarized somehow? What will that look like?
Well, the report will be delivered in an executive summary, then a narrative format, and then a more formalized assessment of what areas in which we might, as a university, want to improve on, and offer some suggestions therein. The qualitative, as you know, is as important as the quantitative, because qualitative is really gets to the root of perceptions, because perceptions are reality. So in terms of trying to create processes and practices and structure to meet that qualitative end, it would require us to really look at those metrics and see how the environment can be improved from one's perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out, you mentioned how broad it is. It's really both a bottom-up and a top-down approach too. I mean, we've identified this area in the strategic plan, as you've talked about. I think it was really one of Dr. Phelps' initiatives to kind of bring you here and get a lot of these programs going. It seems like it's got a broad base of support and encouragement from the institution.
Absolutely. Research shows us without a doubt that successful diversity initiatives can't be achieved, that the success of an environment can't be achieved without leadership, without strong leadership in terms of creating the environment, creating the resources necessary to facilitate that end goal, and then subsequently creating the strategic planning, the bottom-up approach, so that Dr. Phelps and the senior leadership can assign priorities to those strategic initiatives that come out of the diversity strategic plan and the university strategic plan. I might take this opportunity to plug one thing for our campus committee and really let you know that it's important for you to do everything you can to get others engaged in taking this survey on July 11th.
It's a little peer pressure.
All that you know, everybody that you talk to on campus, please encourage them to take the survey.
That's great. Well, Clinton, thanks for your leadership on this. It's been great talking to you a little bit. Where can people go for more information?
Certainly. On our portal is a site for the climate study, cultural proficiency climate study, and please visit the portal and look at more details about the climate study. If you want to learn more about the diversity office, you can go to our webpage, which is www.atsu.edu/diversity. There is some interesting information about what we do, the services that we provide, and resources for our campus constituents.
Great. Well, let's take a little break, and we'll come back in just a minute to kind of wrap things up. But first, one of the purposes of the Lunch and Learn is to let you get to know a little bit more about some of the senior leadership at ATSU. And that was another thing that came out of the strategic plan and human resources. And so Kit and Joe, as many of our faithful viewers know, have done the carpool karaoke kind of set with some of the different senior leaders. And this week we've got Randy Danielson, and I think you'll really enjoy this one.
My name is Joe Vincent, and we are back with another edition of Get to Know with Kit and Joe, and I assume Kit's there in the studio watching this. He'll enjoy this. How did you get into, what is your profession, and how did you get into it to begin with?
Well, thanks, Joe, and yeah, keep your eyes on the road.
I will.
And,
I will.
Well, I was fortunate enough in the what I call the early days to be involved in a profession that just started. And my background was started in the Air Force as a medic.
Really?
And back in the early 1970s, they were starting this new profession called physician assistant. And started at Duke University, where Dr. Eugene Stead took 4 independent duty Navy medics who coming back from Vietnam and started a program to extend the capabilities of physicians, and they called it physician assistant. So I had heard about this, and as I was getting out of the Air Force, I was actually out here at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona.
Really?
As a medic, and I heard about a program at the University of Utah. and it was geared toward either medics or nurses. And so I applied to that program. I'm originally from Idaho, and so the program in Salt Lake was near home, and I applied and was fortunate enough to be in class 4.
Oh, cool.
There were 12 of us. 10 of us were military corpsmen and 2 nurses, and it was a program that trained us and then sent us out into small communities in the Intermountain West. And I ended up in a little town called Kearns, Utah, with a wonderful primary care family doc who trained me for a good 5 years how to take care of patients. And so that's how I got into the profession. I ended up moving to Arizona back in '79 and was able to work in family practice, emergency medicine, occupational medicine. And so I practiced as a PA for about 25 years. And then I wanted to do something different. And so I wanted to get into PA education.
Yeah.
There was not a PA school in Arizona.
That's going to be my next question.
Yep, no schools. And so I was offered a job at Wichita State University in Wichita, Kansas,
Yeah.
to go out and be a brand new PA faculty member. And so I took that on and went out there, and I was there for about a year when things were happening here in Arizona. And the KCOM had a presence here in Arizona for many years with their 3rd and 4th year
Right.
DO program, but there was a discussion, and Dr. Phelps was involved in that conversation about starting a school at that time on the campus of Grand Canyon University, and so one of the programs was PA, and a friend of mine, Dr. Rick Davis, was sort of tasked to be the first chair of that program. And he called me back in Kansas and said, "I'm not going to do this unless you come back to Arizona and help me do it." So we came back, and we were on the campus of Grand Canyon. Actually weren't. We were actually in a little strip mall in the corner of 35th Avenue and Camelback. Didn't even have a building yet.
Wow.
And no windows in our offices. So we ended up putting together the PA program, the PT program, the OT program, and what we called at that time a sports healthcare program, which later became AT.
So tell me what a day in the life of the dean at Ashes is like. Because you could, again, the diversity of programs, I imagine, I think you guys have more students than probably any of the other schools running around. So what's it like?
Well, it's exciting. Every day is certainly a new adventure. But let me give you sort of the foundation of this. And you're right. Right now we have just a little under 1,000 students in the Arizona School of Health Sciences. So it's about 50% residential, and about 50% are in our post-professional online program. So almost 1,000 students, about 75 to 80 faculty and staff, 5 departments, 11 programs, including 2 PT residencies and a audiology clinic. So like I say, every day there's a new adventure. There's always something going on, whether it's dealing with curricular issues, student issues, faculty issues. And so my day usually starts out with, like most administrators, meetings. You got,
Right.
death by meetings. But I have the opportunity of having 5 just wonderful department chairs, and we have weekly meetings with each other. Every other week we have a chairs council meeting.
Oh, okay.
And so we're always talking about what's going on, what are the needs of each of the programs, and what are the barriers to success, things like that. So my day is spent interacting with department chairs, with faculty, with students. It's not uncommon to have faculty meet with me or students meet with me. So
wow, you're still able to meet with students?
I am. We all here have an open door policy. So when we do orientations, we always tell our students, if you have any issues, we encourage you to go to your department chair. But if you want to come and talk to the dean, you're welcome to do that, and then I could share things with the department chairs. So within reason. I mean, it works out really well.
Sure. Dr. Danielson, thank you so much for your time. I know now, especially, I have a better appreciation of how valuable it is. And I really think these types of things are really valuable for people like me who sit in an office somewhere and I do work, but I'm not really sure how whatever I'm doing is actually affecting anyone else or what it's actually contributing to. So I think these kind of conversations are incredibly valuable for me because I can see guys like you who are the leaders of our university and know that not only are you just wicked smart and you've had incredible amounts of experience already, but you know where we're going in the future. And I think that that's probably one of the coolest things about our leadership is the ATSU has been around just long enough to demonstrate to anyone watching that we're really good at picking our spots and seeing where the need is and filling those gaps. And I think that's fun for me.
Well, and thank you, and thanks for driving safely.
Awesome. All right. Hey, this has been Get to Know with Dr. Randy Danielson, the Dean of the Arizona School of Health Sciences. He's got a lot going on, but I've got fly fishing rods in the trunk. So we'll see you guys when we see you. Hey, thanks for watching. Until next time, I'm Joe. That's Dr. Danielson. We will talk to you again soon. Thanks.
All right, and we're back and wrapping it up for the season, our 5th season. So lots of thank yous to go around. Thanks to Beth for tips and tricks. Thanks to Clinton for being here again to talk about the climate survey. That's great. Give us the date one more time.
July 11th.
July 11th. And be sure to peer pressure your friends,
Absolutely.
colleagues, everyone within the ATSU community. We really need to get a good response for that. So
Very important.
thank you very much. And then I can't forget to thank Gene Varnold and the rest of the team for doing such a great job with putting all of these together. We've got lots of people in the background. I wish we could kind of move the cameras around and show everyone how much work goes into this. But they're really valuable. And this team has put together some great skills. So if you're a faculty person or an administrator and you want to use some of these tools, really that's part of the reason that we're doing this, is so that we can build those skills and then use them for things like the academic community, different types of promotional material that you need for your department and whatnot. So let us know. So thank you to everyone involved. Corey, Barb, Gene, who else? Joe, Kit. I should put those guys in, even though they left me hanging today. Steve, and Jordan. So great. Thank you all very much. We will be back next season, so we're going to take a couple of months off for the summer. And if while you're gone over the summer, you want to be looking at some of these other repeat episodes, then remember its.atsu/YT for YouTube and catch us there. Thank you very much.